Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, host and head bookologist here at the Get Literate podcast. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. On this podcast, we explore the power of bookology and leading literate lives. We talk all things books and reading and notebooks and writing, mixed in with mindful practices and creativity to create lives we love. You can expect regular weekly episodes focused on 3 books you need to know about on a bookish theme and how to bring those themes to life in our actual lives too. You can also expect author interviews, notebooking inspiration, and topics to help us grow through what we go through and take inspired action to make our lives better. So grab a notebook and your TBR list and let's get literate. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Get Literate podcast. I'm Stephanie, your host here at the podcast and someone who's trying to get into the holiday spirit. But you can tell, can't you? Last week, I aired my holiday notebook episode. It's the number one way that I head into the holidays happy. This week, I'm continuing that holiday spirit and I'm sharing a trio of books. And yes, I'm going to sneak in a fourth, but I'm sharing a collection of books that embraces one particular aspect of the holiday: pie. Yes, you heard me say it correctly, pie. If you're listening to this episode in real time, then on Thursday, we are celebrating American Thanksgiving. That means friends, family, food, and pie, which just so happens to be the number one Thanksgiving dessert. And that's not my opinion, by the way. I personally would choose a different dessert as my favorite holiday dessert, but it is a fact from multiple online polls. We prefer pie around the holidays. And according to Real Simple and Instacart, we have particular favorites for the holiday too. First up, can you guess, is pumpkin pie. Then comes apple, then pecan, then a cream pie, a cherry pie, a berry pie, and a chocolate pie. Those are the top most requested, most favorited pies around the Thanksgiving season. So lucky for all of us pie lovers out there, there are some great books with pie as a central theme too. And that's what we're talking about today. Books with pie. I think these books are perfect to pair with your Thanksgiving holiday. So I usually share a set of 3 books, but I did have to sneak in a fourth today because the first book I want to share is such a classic book that if you haven't read this book, I need you to go read this one first and then come back to jump on the pie bandwagon with all of the other books. So this first book I'm talking about, I consider it a classic favorite, is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. So this is one of the books that when I turned the last page, I hugged it like a physical hug. And I know many of you do this too. But honestly, at the time, this book was unlike any other book that I've read. Yes, I've read epistolary novels, and yes, I've read historical fiction. But until this book, I never really read a novel that brought me back in time to another location halfway around the world, but really made me feel like these characters were dear friends that I could meet for coffee later in the day or send off a pen pal letter to also. So the book chronicles the lives of multiple people living on the island of Guernsey. It centers around Juliet. She is a writer in London, and she receives letters from all sorts of people and writes to people. And she's got one particular letter writer who she connected with. And so she's receiving letters, she's sending letters to people that she's never met, but she is so fiercely connected to them through their love of books and through their letters back and forth to each other. Readers can't help but feel just as connected to those characters as Juliet does. And I could just imagine each of them writing their respective letters and mailing it out, and could just really see the stories unfolding and intertwining on the page. It's got some beautiful themes of friendship and found family and books, and of course, pie. So if you haven't already read this book, please do. And then share it with anybody else who hasn't read it. And then maybe you might even consider creating your own literary society and bringing your favorite pie that it's available. This is such a wonderful book, and it's a wonderful book to kick off the holiday season with, too. So that's the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, and it's written by Marianne Schaffer and Annie Barrows. And for all of you children's literature fans out there, Annie Barrows is the author of the Ivy and Bean series, which is one of my favorites. And so that was a nice little tidbit of information I didn't realize at the time when I first read this. So that's the first one that if you haven't read this classic book with pie in it, that's the one I think you should go get first. But now let's move on to the three books that I do tend to think of when I think of books about pie. Now, these are not surface level books about pie, as you can tell from my Guernsey description. Yes, there is pie in them, but there is also a fiction story and there is a lot of depth. These are not nonfiction books. These are not cookbooks. These are fiction novels that I think you will love. The next one I want to share is truly a book that I couldn't stop thinking about for a long time. And if you follow me on social media, if you've listened to other episodes of the podcast, then you have likely heard me talk about this book. This is a book that sparked some inspired action for me. And I love when books do that. The book I'm talking about is The Magic of Lemon Drop Pie by Rachel Linden. So I initially borrowed this book from the library, and then I went out and bought my own copy so I could have it sitting on my bookshelf from whenever I wanted to read it. It truly was that life-changing and eye-opening. So it's about Lolly. And Lolly is trying to keep her family's diner afloat. She gets up day after day after day at the crack of dawn to make her mother's signature lemon meringue pie and save the family business. But when she's making those pies one morning, she happens to find a list of life goals that she wrote for herself back in her middle school notebook. When she looks them over, she decides that it's time to make good on those promises that she wasn't quite keeping to herself. Instead of getting up day after day after day and wondering what may have been. But she needs a little magic in there. So Aunt Gertie happens to have some magical lemon drops. And with those magical lemon drops, I won't tell you how, but she gets a glimpse into the lives she might have had if she made different decisions. And in the process, she realizes some very important, profound truths. I can't say much more than that, other than I think this book reminds readers that we all have the power to create the life we want if we are honest, if we pay attention, and if we seek joy. And those three actions happen to be a mantra that you will read throughout the book that I have continued to say to myself day after day after day. This is one of my new favorite, best books ever. It is on that list in my book journal. And if I'm also honest, this book sparked me to do something that I have never in my life done before, which is bake from scratch a lemon meringue pie with gluten-free crust. Now, for those of you that are gluten-free, you know that that's just complicated to make a gluten-free crust. But I have never attempted to make something like this. But I was so taken with this book and so taken with the lemon meringue pies that I was reading about, and quite happy to see the actual recipe in the book. And so the second I turned the page, I went to the store, I got the ingredients, I made the book, and I got to tell you, it was delicious. I think I can make it look a little bit better, and I will as I keep trying that recipe, but I pretty much ate the entire pie myself. as a way to celebrate all that I had learned and all that I had thought of in this book. So if you're looking for a book that's about pie, but you're also looking for a book that's about finding yourself and figuring out the control that you might already have that you don't already know, and have some fun along the way, then The Magic of Lemon Drop Pie is a book for you. And the best part is that Rachel Linden is just newly publishing another book that I cannot wait to get my hands on. So I'll be posting about that on my social media feed soon. So if you want a sneak peek, then you can find me at Affinito Lit on just about all the social platforms. So that's The Magic of Lemon Drop Pie by Rachel Linden. Now, the next book I want to share with you is a middle grade novel. You know that I adore children's literature, and I think that all adults should read children's literature. In fact, I believe that so much that I started a second podcast called Kidlit Love, where every week I interview a children's literature author and we talk about their books and especially their most recent books that we could read to our inner child and share with the young children around us. So I had to bring this book to you today because it is a quintessential middle grade novel about pie. But it's not just for kids. There are so many adult lessons here that I think are going to soothe your adult reading heart too. So the book is called Summer of a Thousand Pies by Margaret Dillaway. I think that this middle grade novel is just what the world needs. It is about 12-year-old Katie Bennett. And Katie has had a difficult life. Her mother died, and her father has struggled to care for her for quite some time. And when her father ends up in jail, Katie goes to live with the aunt that she never knew she had in a life that was much different from her own. So, as to be expected, it takes Katie some time to adjust, but her shared love of pie and cooking and the Great British Bake Off, by the way, instantly connects her to her aunt and her partner, even if it was a rocky start at the beginning. But when our aunt's pie shop starts to go under, Katie once again starts to worry about her future. What's going to happen? Where is she going to go? But this time, things are different. Katie is now nourished. She's nourished with food, with love, and the support of a community. And because of that, she learns how to find herself and quite possibly save the day too. This book really has something for everyone, and it explores so many important themes: parental relationships, parents in prison, mental illness, undocumented immigrants, same-sex relationships, all of those big important things done in such an appropriate, developmentally appropriate way, while wrapping the reader in this lightness of pie. So this is a book that just blends all of it together. It embraces and explores what it means to be human and to have hope inside all of the complexities and challenges we face. And yes, there are 1,000 pies to be made. I adored this book. This book has a permanent residence on my bookshelf, and I've recommended it to so many people since I've read it recently. That's Summer of a Thousand Pies by Margaret Dillaway. Now, I want to end with a book that you would not think is about pie. And it's a book that I have mentioned on the podcast before because of a couple of reasons. Number one, it was first suggested, actually, this author was first suggested way back when Kara from the Bookish Flights podcast recommended 3 books set in the Midwest. And J. Ryan Stradal was one of those authors she recommended. She actually recommended Great Kitchens of the Midwest. I loved that book and I loved the author and I loved the format so much that I read all the backlist. And so the book I want to bring to you today is The Lager Queen of Minnesota by J. Ryan Stradal. Now, I know what you're thinking. I thought this was an episode about pie, not beer. Well, it is. But to be honest, the book starts out about pie. So at first, I really thought the entire book was about pie. And then I thought, yeah, no, it is a book about beer. But now that I have turned the last page on this book, I know it's a book about finding yourself. It's a book about finding your passion, about what it means to be a family. And my favorite lesson, it's never too late. And all of those lessons start with one pie. So just like all of his other books, the format of this book is just so intriguing. I said in my review that the book's structure had me at hello, and then I stayed for these deep connections I was forming to the characters and the content. Just literally felt like I was there inside the book with them. I think this is a book that can help someone find their passion. I think it's a book that can help someone reflect on their life decisions and make choices to make both of those things better. It is a must read, and it shows how one little thing, one pie, one act of courage can change everything. So that's The Lager Queen of Minnesota by J. Ryan Stradell. Now, I hope that you've seen through my collection of 3 books and a bonus that there's a central theme here, right? Food really is inextricably connected to everything, right? Think about going out with friends. There's usually food or coffee or a beverage. Family events, gatherings, holidays, it all centers around food. It's central to our lives. So you may have thought that this episode was going to be a light and fun episode, right? It's just books about pie. But because of that food connection to who we are and family and friends and culture and the way the world works, these books are actually much deeper than that. And what starts out as a book about pie can actually be a book that can help us think about the important things in our lives and then make our lives better. So I hope you enjoyed listening to the books that I recommend about pie as you get ready either to bake or purchase some pie on your own. And of course, I would love to know what books about pie that you have read and enjoyed. So you can find me online on social media at AfinitoLit on just about all of the social platforms. You can head online to alitlife.com and you can put your favorite recommendations in the show notes. You can head to Facebook and look up our private group called Get Literate, and you can share them there. Or if you want the easiest way, in my opinion, just click on your podcast platform, click the voice message, and send me a personal message letting me know what you think and what your recommendations are. So that is it for today's episode. I'm here wishing you happy reading and happy Thanksgiving. I'll see you inside the next episode. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. Plus, if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing life, like bonus podcast episodes, bibliotherapy book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much, much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all of the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. And one more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks for listening.